Good evening, Professor and my dearest classmates. My topic tonight is translator style or translational style, a corpus-based study of style in translated Chinese novels. Introduction. Based on Legend Short define style as the way in which language is used in a given context by a given person for a given purpose and so on. And Baker puts forward the concept of translator style, which is analogical to the author style. In this study, the researchers make use of the Baker methodology to investigate the translating style of Howard Goldblatt, a research professor who has translated many modern and contemporary Chinese novels in English. Claude Young, another renowned translator of Chinese literature, are used as a comparable corpus. The investigation is followed by a discussion of the methodology used in studying in translator style. In Sadahan's words, the S-type is a way of responding to the source text regularly. Compared with the T-type translator style, the S-type, which shows consistently in all translated works by the same translator, can differentiate one translator from another regardless of the source text and is of more significance in terms of translation studies. Style in translation studies. It has approached from two perspectives. Style is the result of choice, and style is the author or ST oriented. In Vinet and Doblet's word, translators are more concerned with question of options with services, and grammar is the domain of services, whereas options belong to the domain of stylistic, or at least a certain type of stylistics. In the pre-linguistic period, loyalty or faithfulness serve as one of the key concept tools in discussing translations. A translator was forbidden to have his or her own style. To achieve some stylistic effects of the ST in TT was one of the way of attain faithfulness in translation. In Cicero's words, in discussing his translations of Aeschines or Demosthenes said, "That is to say, I translated the most famous orations of the two most eloquent Attic orators, Aeschines and Demosthenes, orations which they delivered against each other, and I did not translate them as an interpreter, but as an orator, keeping the same ideas and forms, or as one might say, the figures of thought, but in language which conform to our usage, and in so doing, I did not hold it necessary to render word for word, but I preserved the general style and force of the language, for I did not think I ought to count them out to the reader like coins, but to pay them by weight, as it were." Style in translation is interpreted as the transfer of rhetorical effect from the ST to the TT, so that the TT possesses the same effect on the TL readers as the ST has on the SL reader. In Taylor's words, the style and manner of writing should be of the same character with that of the original. Successful transfer of the ST style is the focus of attention of almost all translators. Nida and Tabor mention style in their definition of translation. Translation consists in reproducing in the receptor language. Translation consists in reproducing in the receptor language to the closest nature equivalent of the source language message, first in terms of meaning and secondly in terms of style. According to the definition, style in translation reproduce the ST style. We can find the style is a combination of genres such as poetry and prose, text type such as narrative, expositive, a expository, argumentative, author style. For instance, the fast-moving Greek style of Mark, the much more polished and structured style of Luke, and rhetorical device such as play on words, acrostic poem, rhythmic units. Translator style. According to the views, the question is: does or should a translator have a style of his or her own in all his or her translations? Baker assumed a positive position by saying that it is possible in principle to identify patterns of choice which together form to particular thumbprint of style of an individual literary translator. Baker's methodology shows three characters. TT orientation. The study of translator style is only TT oriented. Subconsciousness. The feature of the translator style or the translator subconsciousness strategy or characteristic use the language rather than purposeful responses to the ST style. Distinction. A translator style can differentiate his or her own way with translating from those of other translators. A comparable model. In 2003, Olohan finds that the frequency of contract form in Bush's translation is close to that in the British National Corpus, while the frequency in Blair's translations is similar to that in the corpus of translated English texts. In 2004, Olohan makes an investigation of two translator styles, those are Peter Bush and Dorothy S. Blair, in terms of their use of contract forms, such as it's for it is or it has in their translations. Make the statement that it may be speculate that the source text and the style of the author are exerting more influence over translators' decision to contrast or not to contrast. With the same methodology, Sadahan explored the differences in translator style between Peter Bush and Margaret Jewel Costa, focusing on the use of foreign words and indicator of translator style in translations. She used bidirectional Portuguese-English parallel corpus as a reference corpus. The two translators different conceptualization of their readership and their role as intercultural mediators. In 2011, she distinguished translator style from translational style by saying that McJagger and Bose Beer are concerned with the style of the text, which is the way of responding to the source text. She offers a revised definition of style, of translator style, a way of translating which is felt to be recognizable across the range translational by the same translator, distinguish the translator's work from that of others, constitute a coherent pattern of choice, is motivated in the sense of that it has a discernible function or functions, and cannot be explained purely with reference to the author or a source text style, or as the result linguistic constraints. Goldblatt's style in his English translations of modern and contemporary Chinese novels. Howard Glass as the foremost translator of contemporary Chinese literature has translated nearly 40 novels by about 20 modern or contemporary writers of mainland China, independently or in collaboration. The researchers select 17 works by different writers translated by Goldblatt independently as the corpus for investigating his translating style. The corpus is representative in his diversity. Yang, another renowned translator of Chinese literature, also translated many contemporary Chinese novels, apart from many other ancient or modern Chinese literary works translated in collaboration with her husband Yang Xianyi, and used the translated works by Yang as a comparable corpus. Table 1. The highest STTR is 47, while the lowest one is 40. The average value of STTR in Goldblatt's translations is 44. The largest M sentence length is 23, while the smallest one is 11. The average value of M sentence length is 15. There is only a slight difference in the STTR among the translated text, which average about 45. Table 2. The average STTR is 46, while the discrepancy between the highest and lowest is only 2. The average M sentence length is 11, with the discrepancy between the largest and smallest M sentences length of only 3 words. Usually, the longer a text is, the lower its TTR will be. The M word length in English fiction text average about 4 letters per word, due to the fact that the English language is characterized by the frequent use of 1-letter, 2-letter, and 3-letter words, such as a, and, the, of, to, in. Thus, the values of TTR and M sentence length can hardly explain anything about translator style. Figure 1. The curve for M sentences has relatively large variability compared with the one for STTR. Figure 2. There are only slight changes in two curves for STTR and M sentence length. The STTR and the M sentence length of Yang remain roughly the same throughout all her translations. Translator style or translational style. Translational universal. We can compare statistic for Gloves and Yang. It may be noticed in Table 3 that the discrepancy between STTR for Gloves and Yang is only 1, and that between M sentence length for the two translators is only 3. These differences between the two groups of statistics are not significant enough to say that Goldblatt and Yang differ in their translating style in terms of lexical diversity or sentential complexity. Table 4. The discrepancies in STTR and M sentence length between Bush and Clark are 8 and 15, respectively, both of which are statistically significant. This demonstrates that the two translations maintain different styles, at least in terms of lexical variety and sentential complexity. The researcher referred to the statistic for the translation of Hong Lou Meng by David Hawkes and the only two complete translations of the work. The discrepancy between the statistics for the two translators are very slight. We notice that the English translation of Chinese novel, classical or contemporary, show similar STTR and M sentence lengths. If English translations from source language other than Chinese also show similar stylistic feature to those delineated here. They indicate is that translator style is more likely to be a type of translational style or translational universal. Table 4. The average values for STTR and M sentence lengths are 44 and 14. 44 and 14. Comparatively, in the fiction subcorpus of the translational English corpus, the overall STTR and M sentence lengths average are 44 and 13, respectively, which are very close to the results of both Liu and the present study. And then they make another stylistic comparison between four native English writers: Charles Dickens, Mark Twain, William Faulkner, and Ernest Hemingway, in terms of the corporate stylistic by the wordsmith tool. Table 5. It may be noticed that Dickens has the highest average STTR, while Hemingway has the lowest one, with a discrepancy of 6 between the two. The average value is 39. This supports the generally accepted fact that Dickens has the high level of lexical diversity, while Hemingway is famous for his simple style of diction. The average value of Twain and Faulkner lie between them. In terms of M sentence length, Faulkner averages 17 words, while Hemingway averages only 10 words, and this is why Faulkner is more difficult to read than Hemingway. The differences between Dickens and Twain is slight. The average value for M sentence length for four writers is 15. Thus, with this statistic alone, it is not necessarily easy to differences writing of one from that of another. From the above descriptions, we may find the corpus methodology for investigation. The translator style, especially the part based on corpus statistics, does not work well enough to tell two translators apart. Table 6. It seems that both Goldblatt and Young preferred the past tense said, although the frequency of said in Goldblatt translations is higher. The discrepancy between the two translators in the use of another three forms are slight. On the whole, Goldblatt makes more use of the verb than Young does. Similarly, the use of reporting verbs said in all its forms in translations of Bush and Clark is shown in Table 7. It can be noticed from Table 7 that the frequency of said is the highest of the four forms in Bush's and Clark's translators. As for the three forms, the discrepancy in the two translators are slight. Figure 3. Said is the most frequently used form of the reporting verb said in all translations under discussing, and is also the form showing the major differences between different translators. Only slight differences appear between use of the other three forms. We can make a comparison. We can make a comparison between translations and the writings of the above mentioned native English writer in terms of the use of reporting verbs said in in all its forms. Table A. Said enjoy the status of the most frequently used form by all four writers, while the differences in the use of the other three forms are not so conspicuous. Hemingway makes more frequent use of said in his writing than do the other three, while using the other three forms of the verb said less than the others. Table 8 can be rendered into Figure 4 as following. Figure 4. The four curves show similar overall tendencies. The major discrepancy between the four native English writers in use of the reporting verb said in all its forms lie in the use of say and said. By comparing with Figure 3, we can see that the pattern of the distribution of use of the reporting verb said in all its forms among the native English writers is much similar to that among the translators. The distribution pattern of the reporting verb said in all its forms is thus more likely to be universal in English translations is similar to the situation in the native English writing. The major differences between translators or writers lie in the use of said. Summary. Translator style in this view is characterized by the three factors: peculiarity. A translator style is the particular way of translating of specific translator which may differentiate him or her from other translators. Translator orientedness. Both ST and TT are taken into consideration as long as the specific way of translating being investigated is the result of the translator's choices. Consistency. A particular way of translating, no matter whether it is derived from subconsciousness, habitual linguistic action, or is purposefully constructed in response to the ST, maintains the consistency in all the translations by the same translators. The underlying part of the original Chinese sentence due to the omission of the pronoun subject and lack the sentence marking verbs, which can be taken as indirect speech or as free direct speech in Chinese. In translating this type of speech presentation into English, it is for translator to make the decision of personal pronoun, subject, and verb tense. From the above example, we may notice that she tends to choose the third person and the past, while James and Goldblatt prefer the first or second personal pronoun in the present tense.